Have you ever wondered why your heart still feels like it's waiting? Why, no matter how much you open yourself, something invisible seems to hold you back? Maybe it's not rejection, maybe it's protection. There are moments in life when it feels like everything we desire is being delayed on purpose, as if the universe itself was keeping you from what you think you want. But what if that delay is divine? What if God is not ignoring you? He's guarding something sacred inside you, your heart. Because the truth is, you are not being forgotten. You are being protected. Protected from people who don't know how to love you the way you were created to be loved. Protected from paths that would destroy your peace. Protected from shortcuts that would make you lose yourself just to be accepted. Sometimes God hides you. He hides you inside seasons of silence and isolation, not because you're unworthy, but because He's preparing you to be seen by the right eyes. He is not denying love to you. He's defining it for you. Every no you've faced, every person who walked away, every unanswered prayer was not a punishment. It was a shield. And while you've been questioning why your heart still feels guarded, heaven has been whispering, it's because you're still being shaped. You are in the sacred stage where God turns heartbreak into wisdom and loneliness into revelation. This is where you stop chasing love and start becoming love. Your heart is still under divine construction, and when the time is right, nothing and no one will be able to take what was built for you. Before we go deeper into this message, check if you're already subscribed to the channel. Like this video if this spoke to something inside you, and tell me in the comments, what do you feel God is protecting you from right now? You see, the reason God is still guarding your heart is because there are wounds inside it that haven't fully healed. It's not that you're broken beyond repair, it's that the healing is still in progress. There are emotions buried so deep that if He gave you everything you wanted right now, those same wounds would bleed all over what was meant to bless you. Sometimes the silence you feel is not distance, it's surgery. God is removing what once made you desperate to be chosen and replacing it with peace. You keep wondering why you still attract people who leave, why love always feels uncertain. But God knows that if He doesn't first teach you what love truly means, you'll keep mistaking attention for affection and chaos for passion. There's a difference between being ready to feel love and being ready to protect it. And that's why you're still in the waiting season. He's strengthening the walls of your heart, not to keep people out, but to make sure that when love finally enters, it doesn't collapse the structure He built. So if you feel unseen, it's not because you're invisible. It's because you're in the process of being purified. God hides you in silence until your value becomes too radiant to be overlooked. He's not delaying your story. He's rewriting it with purpose. And one day, you'll look back at this chapter and realize that His protection was never punishment. It was preparation, a divine act of love disguised as waiting. Your heart isn't being ignored. It's being trained to recognize what's real when it arrives. There are moments when we meet people who feel like destiny. Their presence awakens something deep inside us, and for a while, it feels like everything finally makes sense. But then, without warning, they drift away, and you're left wondering why something that felt so divine ended in silence. What you don't see is what God saw. Sometimes He lets certain people cross your path not to stay, but to show you what you still need to heal. They appear to reveal the cracks you tried to hide, to expose the places where your heart still bleeds. And when their purpose is complete, God removes them, not as punishment, but as protection, because a connection born from emptiness will always end in exhaustion. Love that starts from need will always turn into dependence. And that's why God interrupts what you thought was meant to last. He knows that what begins too soon breaks too easily. You think you lost someone special, but in truth, you were saved from a version of yourself that wasn't ready to love in the way your soul deserves. God allows separation to teach you that timing matters just as much as love itself. There is a difference between meeting the right person and meeting them at the right time. He doesn't want you to build something sacred with hands that are still shaking from your last heartbreak. He wants you to stand firm, to love from a place of peace, not pain. And sometimes that means losing people who were never meant to go with you to the next season. When God guards your heart, He doesn't just protect you from others. He protects you from the version of you that still confuses attachment with purpose. So don't call it rejection, call it redirection, because what leaves early was never meant to carry your eternity. There comes a moment when the only thing louder than your prayers is God's silence. You wait, you plead, you search for signs, but all you hear is stillness, and that stillness starts to feel like abandonment. But what if the silence isn't the absence of God? What if it's His answer? Because silence is where He does His deepest work. It's where He removes the noise of your desires so you can finally hear the truth. When you can't see movement, that's when heaven is most active. God's silence isn't a punishment. It's a conversation happening in a language your mind doesn't understand yet. He is teaching you how to trust what you cannot trace. He's showing you that faith isn't about seeing results, but about resting in His process. Sometimes, if God answered too soon, you'd settle for less than what He promised. That's why He hides His hand until your heart stops trying to control the outcome. You may feel like nothing is happening, but in the unseen, everything is being rearranged. The connections you lost, the opportunities that vanished, the doors that never opened, none of it was random. God's silence is strategy. It's the shield that keeps you from walking through doors that would have destroyed you. So, if you find yourself in a season where heaven feels quiet, don't mistake it for distance. It's protection, disguised as stillness. Because sometimes the silence of God is the sound of Him standing guard over your life. If this speaks to something inside you, leave a comment below saying, "I trust God's timing." Waiting is one of the hardest things God ever asks of us, because waiting feels like standing still while life moves forward without you. But what if the waiting isn't a pause, but preparation? What if the very thing you're praying for requires a version of you that doesn't exist yet? Every delay has intention. God doesn't make you wait to punish you. He makes you wait to position you. He's not withholding blessings. He's making sure you're mature enough to hold them without letting them destroy you. The wait is where He builds endurance, humility, and trust. The kind of trust that doesn't crumble when the outcome takes time. There are lessons that can only be learned in the silence between asked and answered. In that space, God refines your motives. He reveals whether you want His will or just your way. And when your heart begins to align with His purpose, the waiting stops feeling like delay and starts feeling like destiny. Every person who came before you, every unanswered prayer, every closed door, they were all part of the shaping. God was teaching you how to stand alone so that when you finally stand with someone, it's out of wholeness, not need. So the next time you feel like nothing is moving, remember this. The waiting room is where heaven writes your story. It's where character is built in the shadows, where faith learns to breathe without proof. Because what's coming isn't small. It's something that requires strength, patience, and a heart that knows the difference between wanting and being ready. You are not being delayed. You are being developed. And when God finally says now, everything you waited for will arrive, carrying the weight of His perfect timing. God doesn't guard what's ordinary. He guards what carries destiny. And that's why He's been so protective of your heart. Because He sees its value even when you don't. There are pieces of your soul that are too sacred to be handled by careless hands, and heaven knows that. You may have wondered why certain relationships never lasted, why people walked away just when you were ready to give everything. But sometimes divine rejection is the highest form of protection. Because what you call loss, God calls preservation. He knows the weight your heart carries, the capacity to love deeply, to feel profoundly, to heal others through the very compassion that once came from your pain. That's why he can't let just anyone have access to it. Not everyone deserves to hold what took him years to shape. There's a strength inside you that was born from brokenness, and he's guarding it until it's time for it to be safely shared. Think of it this way: a treasure isn't hidden because it's worthless. It's hidden because it's precious. And you too have been hidden, not forgotten, not overlooked, but reserved for the kind of love that mirrors God's patience, gentleness, and truth. So if you feel like your heart is in a box, remember, it's not confinement, it's preservation. God is not keeping you from love, He's keeping love from reaching you prematurely. Because when the moment finally arrives, He doesn't want your heart to survive it. He wants it to flourish within it. You are not waiting in vain. You are being kept for something rare, something holy, something that won't ask you to shrink to be understood. And when that love finally comes, you'll understand why God guarded you so fiercely. There's a weight in hearing silence when your heart was ready to hear yes. It's the ache of preparation colliding with expectation. You've prayed, waited, surrendered, and still the answer doesn't come. Or worse, it comes wrapped in uncertainty. But here's the truth few are willing to accept. When God says not yet, it's not rejection, it's refinement. God's no is rarely final. Most of the time, it's not now. Because what He has for you requires alignment, not anxiety. He's not punishing you by postponing your desires. He's protecting the promise from being planted in the wrong season. Even good things, when received at the wrong time, can become destructive. And God loves you too deeply to let blessings arrive before you're built to carry them. So when He whispers, wait, it's not because He wants you to suffer in stillness. It's because He's still writing the parts of your story that would make the promise make sense. He's aligning circumstances, preparing hearts, and healing places in you that would sabotage what's coming if it came too soon. Think about this. A seed planted before the soil is ready will rot instead of grow. That's what premature blessings do. They die in soil that hasn't been prepared, and God, in His mercy, refuses to let your purpose decay under the weight of impatience. He's not ignoring your prayers, He's upgrading your foundation so that when the answer finally arrives, it won't break you, it will sustain you. You see, delay isn't the enemy, disobedience is, and sometimes trusting God means believing that His not yet is the kindest thing He could ever say. Because every not yet is a silent promise. I haven't forgotten you. I'm just finishing what I started in you. So don't curse the waiting. Don't resent the pause. What feels like denial is often divine direction in disguise. One day, when the pieces align, you'll look back and realize that God's timing wasn't late, it was perfect. If this message reached something deep inside you, leave a comment below saying, I accept God's timing for my life. One day, without warning, the waiting will start to make sense. You'll look back at the unanswered prayers, the doors that stayed closed, the people who never came back, and you'll finally understand that God wasn't being silent. He was being strategic. Because His plan was never just to give you what you wanted. It was to make you become what you were created to be. The purpose of every delay, every heartbreak, every season of silence is alignment. God uses time as a tool to sculpt your heart, to strip away what was shallow and to awaken what was divine. He doesn't just fix your path, He refines your perception, teaching you to see life not through the lens of lack, but through the lens of purpose. There's a moment in every journey where pain becomes revelation. You stop asking, why me? And start whispering, thank you, because you realize that what broke you didn't come to destroy you. It came to reveal what could no longer stay hidden, the depth of your strength, the resilience of your spirit, and the quiet wisdom that can only be born from surrender. The meeting with purpose doesn't happen in noise. It happens in stillness. It happens in that sacred place where your will finally bows to His. And suddenly, What you once called loss becomes the lesson that carried you home. God's protection starts to look like favor. His silence starts to sound like strategy. The emptiness you hated becomes the space where His presence finally fits. You'll begin to see that every detour was direction, every delay was design, every closed door was a divine redirection to something higher. And the moment you stop fighting the process, you'll find yourself walking in peace. Not because everything finally worked out, but because you finally understand why it had to be that way. Purpose is never discovered in comfort. It's born in the breaking, matured in the waiting, and revealed in the moment you stop running from yourself. And when you finally meet it, you'll realize that God wasn't preparing you for a blessing. He was preparing you to become one. There comes a moment when the storm inside you finally becomes quiet. Not because everything changed, but because you did. The questions that once consumed your mind begin to fade. Not because you found all the answers, but because you learn to rest in the mystery. That's when the heart begins to understand. Understanding doesn't arrive like lightning. It unfolds slowly, like morning light seeping through the cracks of a long night. You start to see patterns in the pain, purpose in the pauses, and beauty in the breaking. You realize that what you thought was abandonment was actually alignment, that every time God said no, He was making room for something greater to take root. There's a quiet kind of wisdom that only comes after surrender, a peace that doesn't need explanations. It's the peace of knowing that what left you wasn't meant to destroy you, it was meant to define you. You stop chasing closure from people who couldn't see your worth, because now you understand that the rejection wasn't personal, it was providential. The love you were searching for in others begins to bloom inside you, purified, patient, no longer desperate to be seen. When the heart understands, it stops striving and starts trusting. It stops asking when and starts whispering, "Whenever you're ready, God." That's when true freedom is born. When you no longer need to force what was never meant for you, because the heart that finally learns to trust timing becomes untouchable by disappointment. And in that quiet revelation, gratitude begins to take the place of grief. You start to thank God not only for what He gave, but also for what He withheld, because every unanswered prayer turned into protection, and every delay became direction. That's when you realize that healing was never about forgetting. It was about understanding that nothing was wasted, that every wound became wisdom, and that your heart was never waiting alone. It was always being held. And now, after all the waiting, the silence, the lessons, and the tears, you finally see it. God was never withholding love from you. He was teaching you how to love differently. He was showing you that real love begins in Him, not in someone else's hands. Every delay, every disappointment, every unanswered prayer was a thread in the tapestry of protection that has been covering your life all along. You begin to see that what felt like isolation was actually invitation, an invitation to meet the version of yourself that existed before the heartbreak, before the doubts, before the need to be chosen. God's protection was never a wall, it was a womb. He was birthing a stronger, wiser, softer you, the kind of person who no longer begs for attention, but radiates peace that draws what's meant for them naturally. And now you carry something sacred, the ability to see through pain without losing compassion. You've learned that God's not yet was never punishment, it was preparation. You've discovered that He never wanted to just give you love, He wanted to make you become love. Because when you finally love from a healed place, your presence becomes healing for others. This is what it means for your heart to be guarded by God. It's not that He's keeping you from something. He's keeping you for something. Something that carries eternal weight. Something that reflects His character. Something that won't need to be forced, chased, or questioned. And when that moment comes, you won't wonder if it's right. You'll know. Because peace doesn't have to prove itself. If you've made it this far, it means this message was meant for you. So take a moment now, check if you're subscribed to the channel, because there's more. waiting for you here. Leave a comment saying, "My heart is guarded by God." That's your declaration today. And don't forget to like this video. It helps this message reach someone who might need it as much as you did. Finally, before you go, stay a little longer. The next video appearing on your screen is connected to this one. It's the continuation of what God has started speaking to you today. Watch it and let Him keep shaping your heart through every word, because sometimes the protection you've been questioning is the greatest proof that you've always been loved.